Hi everyone, my name is May. I'm from Good Story Chinese Translation. Today I'm going to talk about how to transcribe a conversation in a foreign language for court proceedings. Um, okay, so today you have received an assignment. A lawyer wants you to transcribe a Mandarin conversation that took place in a noisy restaurant between three people for a civil litigation. So, there are three approaches that you can adopt to transcribe this conversation. The first one is to translate it into English text. The second approach is to transcribe it into a Chinese text and then translate that Chinese text into English. The third approach, with the advancement of machine speech to text technology, you can have the software transcribe it into Chinese and then you translate the Chinese into English. So regardless which approach you take, you all have the final output of the English text. The first approach is the one that I usually use because it is efficient. But sometimes your lawyer may ask you to provide the English text as well. So in that case, if that is absolutely necessary, you can do that, but it will take longer. And the third approach will improve your efficiency because with the advancement of speech-to-text technology such as Google Cloud based data, you will be able to have a software process the audio and turn it into a Chinese text, and then you have a translator manually listen to the text and then make necessary corrections. Today my talk is going to focus on approach number one, the traditional approach. I will have another presentation to talk about some of the performance of the online machine transcription softwares or platforms that I have used and tested by uploading a Mandarin and a Cantonese audio and compare their results. So without further ado, I'll go into the three draft process. So now I have this Mandarin conversation in front of me. So no doubt my usual practice is to import it into Express Script, the translation software I usually used that work with a paddle. I have another presentation that talk about how to set that up, but here I'll just focus on the process. So my first step would be to listen to the conversation and type out everything as fast as I can. The purpose of this step is to cover as much of the conversation as possible in the least amount of time. So the focus here is speed rather than accuracy. If I have three audio files that are related to the same case, that is to say there are three different conversations that happened at different points of time. I would usually follow the chronological order to do the first step for all the three files first, so that I have a good understanding of the speech style of the speakers, as well as the context of the conversations. Step number 2, I would go back and listen to the audio file and check my first draft. I'll make necessary corrections at this step. So the purpose of this step is accuracy. So usually this can be the most time consuming step among the three, because you may have to replay certain sections again and again to make sure that you have got down exactly what the person is saying. And so this is step number 2. And step number 3, I'll turn off the audio and just read through my second draft. And in this process, I would imagine that I am a English reader. I'm the solicitor and or the judge, and I am looking at this script and whether I can understand the conversation, and whether there's any discrepancy from my understanding of this text compared it with what I have heard in Mandarin. So and also this is the step where I will correct my own typos or research on certain terminologies to make sure the words that I used are faithful to the original. And this is where sometimes I find that transcribers should or translators, if it's a foreign language translation or transcription, should read more novels, because that's when you are playing that novels in your brain, and you use the words to describe various meanings, and and the more nuance you can reproduce, the more accurate your translation would be. So these are the 3 draft process, and the format I tend to use is a 2-column table where I have the speaker on the left and the speech on the right, and I'll show you shortly what it will look like. I'm also going to show you some of the text features of a transcription, because sometimes putting a speech onto paper, when people speak, they have all those their own sort of signatures, and all those signatures such as or sometimes they may over talk each other if it's a phone conversation that was recorded, say for surveillance purpose. So I'm going to show you what I mean here. I'm going to open up a file that I have prepared. So transcript, and the text I have prepared is the transcript sample. Now it's opened. I have highlighted some of the features to draw your attention to. As you can see, this is a two-column table, and with the speaker on the left and the conversation on the right. Usually, I will have a translator's note at the top that start with a certification that I'm accredited to interpret from Cantonese to English. Basically, you need to understand the spoken language, and so I'll usually put my spoken language accreditation at the top. And also, when it comes to committing an audio conversation into text, ideally, the transcriber should also have a translation accreditation. So I have accreditation to translate from Chinese into English, and I have the name of the file name of the recording, and I also have some explanations, such as stands for unknown male, and UF1 stands for unknown female 1, and then K stands for somebody, D stands for somebody, and J stands for somebody. And English is in bold, Mandarin is in italic, and Cantonese is in normal font. Because what you tend to find is that in real life conversation, people tend to mix the language quite a bit, especially if they are bilingual or trilingual speakers. And if I put a round bracket with the word or words inside, that means this is word or words that is or are indecipherable. And sometimes I may even put a square bracket, for my comments. So I can say square brackets equal to translator's comment. This is to differentiate what is in the conversation and what is not. When I use round bracket, that means that's part of the conversation. When I use square bracket, it is just my comment to assist the reader. Okay, so if the conversation doesn't start from at the beginning, then I'll usually put a time code at the beginning, so that the user can, if they want to play the audio corresponding to a certain part of text, they can jump to that point straight away. Especially if it's a surveillance recording or a covert recording, you may have a long period of time where it's market noise, background noise, and so on. But what we're interested in is the conversation. So you will put a time code when a section of the conversation starts, and then so D says goji very healthy, and as we can see here, the context is not necessarily clear to us, but we just type out whatever we have heard, and then okay, and then D says laughed. So laugh is a description of what's happening in the background, or it can be part of the conversation. So usually for movements or sounds in the background, I use a small stroke before and after the description, and then D says correct, that's right, or it could be translated as yes I haven't, or no I haven't. As It's interesting, in English, say, when you are say you when UN says you haven't just come back from overseas, have you? So if you say if if you agree with that speaker, you haven't been to overseas, then you would say no I haven't. But in some language, such as Chinese, and sometimes the speaker may be saying something like, I agree with you, or correct, I haven't. So it's important that we transcribe the meaning rather than the words. Sometimes people tend to use yes to represent agreement, but in English, you would say, no, I haven't, rather than yes, I haven't. So this is an area that we need to be careful. You are faithful to the original in its meaning, but not in its form. So if you follow the form too closely, you may end up making a mistake. As you can see here, this is a round bracket word. That means this is something that I have not heard clearly. And then haven't been to Box Hill just now. Have been to Box Hill just now to have something to eat. It's interesting. Some of the languages, such as Mandarin or Cantonese, do not have a subject. It's assumed that the subject can be understood from the context of the conversation. So here, obviously, K is talking about, I have been to Box Hill just now to have something to eat. But the sentence does look a little bit strange in an English reader's eyes, as if it's a grammatically incorrect sentence. So different translators have different approach on this matter. I usually, if the subject can be inferred from the context, and it's just a habit of a language that does not have a subject, then for the ease of understanding of the English audience, I will usually put the subject back. But I think some of my colleagues may disagree, and they insist on being faithful to the Chinese original, and I can understand that, as long as the reader has that knowledge about the Chinese language, then they would not find it too odd. And then Kay says, I drop in the shop number 226. So you can either type it out in words, or you can write the numerals. If it's 226, then you can either write this one or this one. This one, it's 226, but it's could also be read as 226. So to avoid confusion, I think the first two would be preferable, and to avoid further confusion as to whether the dash is part of the conversation, it would be best to just type out the number in words form. And as long as you plural are present, here plural has a square bracket. That means it is a translator's note or comment, because in English you can be you singular or you plural, but in this case, the translator want to tell the audience that in the conversation, this is actually a plural you, because in Chinese 你们 it's quite it's unlike English. It could be singular or plural. In Mandarin, when you hear 你们, it has to be plural. So, and then you can see here I have also two or here. So if you're because Chinese is a phonetic, it's a language that have different tones. The word for two is and the word for ear is so if you're not sure which one the speaker is meant to use, then maybe you can put both and then just put a slash in the middle, or sometimes you can even put a round bracket around it to say that it is not very clear which one it is. But compared with words, that means you don't hear anything at all. You're not able to guess what that words what the word is. You're pretty sure it is either two or ear. Then so you can actually put them both in to increase the accuracy of your transcript. And then here we have the people working in those buildings. So that's the areas that I think I have heard these words, but I'm just 80% sure, not 100% sure. So in this situation, instead of just put words in it, that would lose the entire phrase. I would put in what I think I have heard, and then put a round bracket to say that I'm not 100% confident this is what I have heard. And I usually would put it or insert the time code next to it, so we have to listen to it again, in court or by a checker. This will make it easier for them to get to that particular section. And I'll move on. So here, if there is really try to end it as ASAP. So here is I use this mark to show that it's like a hesitation or a pause in the speech. Then how to compete with Glenn. So Glenn, as a Chinese living overseas, usually like to use place names in English, and therefore I use bold to say that this is actually in English. You have not called him or her. So in Chinese, 他 can refer to a female or male. So I'm not sure, therefore I put both here. As we can see here, guarantor is a word in English that the speaker has used. The reason I have highlighted English words is to, in a way, to help the court to have a general understanding of the English level of the speakers, because sometimes if say the litigation is about a contract in English that say was signed but was not interpreted correctly to one of the parties, then the English level or the ability to understand English of a party could be material to a case. think we have pretty much covered the major speech characteristics of a transcript. And thank you for listening to my presentation. I hope you have learned something interesting today. And we have other presentations on our website, www.chinesetranslationmelbourne.com.au. Please feel free to look at the other presentations in relation to how to use express script and a paddle to do transcription.